Hi, this is John. Most of you know me as Tomato Dragon on DA, and this is my first tutorial. And I'm going to be discussing one-point perspective. First thing I do is draw a horizon line, or the camera line. That's pretty much where the eye level is. You pick a point, and then you draw out your perspective grid from that. As this has been done already. I've edited this video, so that's how the grid got drawn so quickly. After that, then you just start. Just going to draw a simple cityscape. You just start using the perspective lines as a template. I'm really slide this, even though this is a sketch. This is pretty much how I do finished pieces too. I'm a big fan of slop when it comes, especially when it comes to perspective. I think keeping drawings loose, I think, just adds a lot more life to it, other than being really stiff and really precise with your lines. But so I just keep going and drawing just simple buildings. One thing with perspective, when in reference to the camera line, again, it's usually called the horizon line. I call it a camera line because of all the 3D animation work I use, I like to think of each scene that I draw as kind of like setting up a scene like in a movie set. So that line is basically where your camera would be directly level with. Now, everything that's going to be drawn above the camera line, basically you're going to be seeing the bottom of, and then everything that's below the camera line you'll see the top of. So as you're watching, as this picture starts to unfold, you kind of see what I'm talking about when I start drawing in little figures just for reference and everything. Again, I just put the dot right in the center. You can put a dot anywhere you want on the line, depending on what kind of mood or the type of setup for your scene that you're going for. Again, really, really sloppy, really loose. One book that's a book that you might want to pick up that's really helpful is and one that I was always looking at when I was learning is called How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way by Stan Lee and John Buscema. A lot of great references in that, especially when it comes to perspective and foreshortening. One little trick that I do, um, this doesn't have to do with perspective, but it has to do more with things in the foreground and objects that are further away, is things in the foreground I tend to make much more darker or a lot thicker lines, and as you move away into the distance, I try to lighten it up, just to kind of puts that effect of atmosphere between you and distant objects. Also, same thing when you're coloring. I like to desaturate the colors for objects that are further away. Just gives a sense of distance. So, anyways, this city's coming along. You see everything's basically. I try to put curves in mine just because I think I like realism, but I also like to put a bit of cartooniness to it. So that's kind of like with my buildings, they seem curved a little bit. And here we go with the characters now. You're going to see all these couple of just quick characters. When you're drawing them in perspective, you line up like right here. Their middle of their heads are pretty much where the camera line is. So whenever you draw any figures now, you want to all line up. Well, if they're all the same height, they would line up all along in that same place along the camera line. Now, of course, not everyone's the same height. You'll have people that are taller and shorter and everything. But it's how you keep everyone looking correct in perspective. Now you're gonna notice I kind of screwed up though on the doors of the buildings, but hey, what are you gonna do? I'm only human. But anyways, and if you had a camera, if you had a scene where maybe you were looking down in down upon this cityscape, still everything would line up. You'd line your figures, their heads, the doors. You got to just kind of think of everything as being to scale. I'm trying to say something here that's coming out wrong. I'll get to it in the next tutorial. Either that or I'll erase this audio and go back and do it again. But anyways. So you drew another little dude there. All the heads are kind of somewhat lined up. The guy in the very, very foreground, he would be taller than the two guys on his right. He's just a little bit taller. He's about maybe the same height as that little dude on the left. Another thing, I always like to draw really dramatic lighting. Um, Especially, I always like black and white drawings. Especially Frank Miller. I think he's that really is a master of dramatic lighting. If you pick up the 300 graphic novel, there's some amazing work in there, especially done with a lot of blacks, a lot of silhouettes are used, but it's just a great example of dramatic lighting that is just used really well. And Frank Miller is definitely one of the guys I studied. This program I'm using, it's called Sketchbook Pro. I don't think I've said that yet. Um, it's probably my favorite drawing program. I use a tablet PC, not a Wacom tablet, but a tablet PC, and it works perfect. It's really meant for that type of computer, but you can use it on a desktop or whatever. But its brush engine is really great. It's really quick. I've never experienced any slowdown with it, especially on high res images. I also like drawing clouds, cloud formations, and I'm gonna have another tutorial for drawing clouds and also explosions. The lighting, I really like drawing them a lot. You can get some really, really great lighting effects in clouds and explosions just because of all the their shape and the dynamics of them. And there's another thing I always go back and I do is, and I got this from Frank Miller again, just because I studied him growing up. Is I like to go back and I like to shade with just pencil scratchings in a lot of the shaded areas. Sometimes I tend to go a bit overboard. I think we're just about done here. But hey, our first tutorial, it's coming to an end. Hope you liked it. That's pretty much how I work when I'm drawing in perspective. I'll get a 2-point and 3-point perspective tutorials coming up for too much longer. A couple more little squiggles there, supposed to represent windows. Done.